Welcome to another episode of Behind the Mask. I'm your host, Sarah Joy, your friendly neighborhood interrogator turned clone. I'm helping you to get to know who the person is behind the screen name. Tonight, we're chatting with DeWayne. You may know him from Flight Risk and as Dr. Fife in Coruscant Nights. Hi, DeWayne.
Hey, Sarah Joy. Hi, all you internet people.
Hello, internet people. The one that's here and everybody else who will be listening to this post-recording. No.
Hey, it's all future people. That's how it works. When you do hey, it's all future people.
Travelers.
That's who everyone I talk to. Mm-hmm. Well, I always like to think that when you release an episode, that it's going to be so cool that someone's going to listen to this like 12 years from now. It's still going to be there. And some little 4-year-old now is going to be some 60-year-old going, what's this behind the mask nonsense thing? And listen to boom. And it's going to blow their freaking minds, you know?
Right. And they're going to be like, oh my God, these people are so cool. 90 years from now. And
I wonder if they're dead. I wonder if they're dead.
Oh my God, I was going to say that. And then I was like, no, don't say that. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
That right there is some Flight Risk brand comedy right there.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So, DeWayne, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Like I have on all my social media handles, I say I'm a teacher by day, podcaster by night, writer by later night. I'm a special education teacher. I've been working with kids my entire life. I've just started finally teaching the last 3 or 4 years. And that is my biggest passion, is working with special needs kids. I work with mild to moderate students, mostly who have emotional disturbance issues. They have, it's the simplest way of saying it, they have rage issues. So I have a lot of angry kids in my class, but I like working with them to deal with their emotions and how to handle it, and then also give them interesting, bits of information, do hands-on stuff. Teaching is what I love. And then the creative stuff, the podcasting, the writing is where I get my creative jolly stuff, where I get to expand and do these crazy ideas that have been bouncing around my mind since I've been 6 years old. I've always been telling stories, and now I got to make them and share them with people. So that's me. I'm in Southern California where it's 95 degrees every day. I've been with my beautiful wife for 24 years now. So yeah, it's a long time. I'm very old. I look young. It's just moisturizing.
You're not that old. I know that you're not that much older than I
am. I'm 42. I turned 43 this year.
You're not that much older than I am.
Well, I'm old because I have a 20-year-old son, so I feel older that way, knowing that my son's already graduated high school and all that. My son is almost as old as I was when he was born. That makes me feel really old.
Oh my God! See, that's the thing that I did, is I never had kids.
Hey, it works for my sister. My sister is only a few years younger than me, but looks like 20 years younger than me. I'm like, it's the no kids thing. I see it. Good choices.
Yep. Me and your sister, I feel like we have a lot in common.
Same page.
Yeah, so I would like to, this is Behind the Mask, so we like to really delve into things where, we don't always get to know, this side of you. I would love to know more about, what got you into special ed?
I've always liked helping people learn. Mm-hmm. And even when I was a kid, it sounds like a brag, but I'm a smart guy. I pick up things very easy. So it was easy for me to do it. And I always wondered why people couldn't pick things up as fast as I could. And so I would try to see how they would see it, and trying to understand how other people thought kind of led me on this path of helping people. And then naturally just seeing people who struggled the most, I'm like, those people need the most help. And I've just always, one of my first jobs, I was a one-on-one aide to a special needs student. I used to do security in these kind of classes I teach now, whereas kids who just needed a lot of help. And it's just always thought that these kids always get it sounds like I'm going to be dismissive of the whole educational process, but they fall through the cracks way too often. That It's just, we're just holding these kids, trying to get them through school and then graduating them, and they haven't learned the skills necessary to function. We teach them how to function in school, but that's 18 years of life. Okay, they're going to live for another 70 years and they don't have the skills to do that. And I'm always like, those kids need the help. They need the most help. And I want to help those kids. And I've always my son is nonverbal autistic. He was diagnosed when he was 3 years old, and by that time I'd already been working with special needs kids, and it's just seeing the great teachers my son has had and how much they've helped him. I'm like, I can do the same thing. I have that same skill set. So I went to school. I got my bachelor's degree in educational theory. I spent 4 years learning how people learn, the different ways that people process information, how things presented can change the way someone learns. And like my master's degree is in special education. I'm just completing that. In like in 3 weeks, I'll have my master's degree in special education. And it's just these kids need help, and I've always wanted to help them. It's the most rewarding thing when someone has that epiphany moment, when they finally realize something, that they understand and they grasp it. And it's great to work in general ed. I've taught that. I've worked with those kids, and it's great. But it's something those kids who have never believed in themselves, who have that moment, like, holy crap, I understand Pythagorean theorem. I'm like, yeah, you got it, man. It's like, there it is. And it's like that moment you see that sparkle in their eyes. It's like, it makes it worthwhile. All the other frustrating parts of my job, the kids who get upset, and I literally have chairs thrown at me, books thrown at me. That's part of my job. But when we have those moments, and they grasp it and they make that moment, it's all worthwhile. All the punches, the bites, and all that other kind of stuff. It's worthwhile in the end for me.
The bites.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been bitten. I've been bitten a few times.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Most with high school kids, I've never been bitten by a high school kid. Usually elementary school kids will do the biting, and they just get frustrated and angry, and they lash out, and we have to put them in restraint, like physical restraining them so they don't hurt themselves. And when you're holding someone, they try to do whatever they can. And I've had chunks of my skin ripped off by kids. I've had to go get tetanus shots multiple times. I had a kindergartner. I'm 6'4", right? And a kindergartner is like 2 foot nothing. So this kid turned to bite me on my inner thigh, which is very close to my groinal region.
Yeah.
And therefore he ripped through my where I was wearing jeans, but then I went to the nurse, and no, I was like literally bleeding down my leg from a kindergartner who just bit me. Not because they were upset, because they have an oral fixation, and no one gave him his teether that day, and he wanted to bite on something, and Mr. F was the closest thing to bite, so he bit me. Not out of rage, just out of physical impulse. Yeah, I had to leave school, go get a shot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's classic. That's classic.
Yeah.
And yet you're still doing what you're doing, and that's amazing.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't. I every day I go to work with a smile on my face, and I love what I do. Even if those days where I get bit, I get a book thrown at me, I get called racist names, whatever. It's part of the job, and I still love what I do.
I love that. I love that so much. And you know what? Like you grew up about the time that I grew up, and I feel like that really was the time that kids were slipping through cracks, and like we were talking about ADHD a little beforehand, and it's so easy to just label someone as stupid or dumb and tell them that they're never going to be able to learn. It's amazing that you figured it out. You know that people can learn.
Yeah, that's to me the biggest mistake that happens in special education, is that some kid struggles when they're in the second or third grade, and they get put in special ed, and they need it at that time, but then it becomes a life sentence. And then this kid's 15, and he's been in special ed, and he doesn't even know why, and he's just in this thing because that's where they keep him. I'm like, I don't understand why he's here anymore. And when I was teaching high school, I'm like, these kids are doing all the work, and I give the same assignments I would a general ed class, even if I'm teaching special ed. You do scaffolding and stuff like that to help. But I'm like, this kid doesn't really need any of my assistance. Why are they here? And I got to call the parents. I'm like, hey, I don't know how to say this, but I don't think your kid belongs in my class, and not in the bad way, but they need to go somewhere harder. It's not challenging. And like, I've had kids leave my class and go back to general ed, and like, why didn't I ever get this option before? I'm like, dude, I don't know. Maybe they've never thought of it, I guess. But yeah, that to me is the biggest frustrating part of special education. It is a life sentence, unfortunately. And there are some kids who need assistance their whole life. That's a given. But I would say there's a good percent of those kids who have no business being in those classes, and it's just easier for everybody else. And unfortunately, that's kind of what happens. Right.
But there are people like you. Like, kudos, man. That's awesome.
I try, and I try to fight that good fight, and that's like I'm a teacher now. I'm getting my master's. My goal is to become a director of a school, so I can actually instead of just changing my class, change an entire school if I can. And that's the goal. That's the fight I plan on fighting the rest of my life. So hopefully I win more fights than I lose.
I feel like you will. I feel like you're such a force for good, you will, and you're a big guy, and if you dye your hair green, you're going to totally do that. They're going to think you're the Hulk.
I'm go full Hulk on them if I have to. I'll dye my hair, paint my face green, whatever works to help these kids. I'm game.
I like it. I like it. So we were having a conversation prior to this about dyeing hair, and DeWayne wants to go green.
Yes.
I wholly support this, and I think that all school systems should realize that you're connecting with the kids better. Anyway, so I'm curious. So you're talking about you try to learn how people learn. You've got all of this education. You have a podcast, Flight Risk, where you game. How does this affect your game master style?
I think for me, what I take most from my teaching self to my game master self is the patience that I have with my students. And then what I do in my class is a lot of how I GM. I start my class with, hey, this is my goal for the day. This is what I'm hoping to get through this English lesson or whatever. But as the lesson's going on, I have to be able to, oh crap, that kid's like about to trigger, so I got to move this, or something else happens. Or the kid, for whatever reason, this worked last week, but this week this is not resonating anymore. So I got to change my tactics and do something else. So I'm always improvising and trying to get the stuff and make it as enjoyable to the people I'm participating with. Like my students, trying to make them enjoy the lesson. And I take that same mentality to when I run a game, is that I want everyone to have fun doing it, because especially role-playing games, they're supposed to be fun. Education to me should be fun too. And I take that same thing, like I want my players to have fun, and I'm always willing to go whatever they need. Like if you have been on my show, like any of the guest stars, Mark's been on my show a few times. I'm one of those say yes GM. They just like on the one of the funny things, like the one arc we just had, episode just came out a couple weeks ago. They're on a deserted, like decrepit cruise ship, and I'm like, okay, you go into this place, and in my notes, it's like there's an opera singer with force abilities that's going to manipulate people with their singing. And that's what I have written down. That's the cool scene I want to see. And I start describing it, and one of my players go, I'm going to flip a light side point, and I want it to be an animatronic animal band like Chuck E. Cheese. I'm like, okay, that's what it is then. Now it's like rainbow rabbits playing banjos is now the thing, and all this whole page of notes I had for all these force powers that was ready to go, push it off the table. I don't need it no more. And now we're fighting robots with banjos. I'm like, that's what we're doing, and it's just I'm like, what am I gonna say? No, it's supposed to be this. It doesn't hurt to go the other way, and I've always been that way. So I've always had loose notes, and it's like I just always say yes. The most ridiculous things. If people like it, you listen to Flight Risk. We have a religion based off of Super Mario Brothers that get introduced early in season 1 that we still joke about today. We had a player tackle a pregnant woman that we still joke about now. It's just like, I'll never say no. Whatever they want to go to, we just do. Like, oh God, that made me think about Coin. That planet was supposed to be this intense, warrior-driven honor planet, and our entire arc was a talent show. And that's what we ended up doing. And yeah, we had it because one of our players, Kyle's a singer, so his character was going to sing it. All the characters had to have, okay, what are you doing in this talent show? One person's like, oh, I'm juggling eyeballs. This person, one was a military guy's like, well, I guess I'm doing like army kata, like military training. And we just went with it. I'm like, okay, that's what we're doing. And that's the same energy I have in class. If it doesn't work, I'm okay, then this is what we're doing instead. And I don't get frustrated. I don't get angry. I'm like, okay, how am I going to make this work? And I just keep moving forward. And I think it's really helped me working with the kids I have to deal with the players. Not that like my players are special, but my players are special in their own way. And it helps me prepare.
Yeah, it's so true. And I'm laughing really hard because I feel like it's a bunch of us nerds who sit around the table and we all have our little idiosyncrasies.
Yes.
And there you are handling us. You're just pulling it out. Out all of your
like in class. Yeah, and it's like the same thing in class. You learn your students, you know how to motivate them, how to get them to keep going forward, to bring more onto them. And as a GM, it's kind of that same thing. You're playing with your players, and you know that, player B doesn't really like to role play emotional stuff. So when you have that scene, you don't go to them. You let them narrate this awesome battle scene with their warrior because that's what they like. Why are you going to force them into a peg they don't fit into? And it's the same thing with special education. Some kid may not like to write. I had a kid in my summer program right now, whenever we did English, he did not want to participate at all. And it's like, and it's not like he couldn't write, he could spell, beautiful penmanship, better than me. He just didn't think he could write good sentences. So for him, we're like, okay, then you just tell me your answer. Like, because we do a journal topic, like, where are you going to be in 5 years? And just ask him, tell me it. And he would just tell me this whole thing, which would be like a page worth of writing. I'm like, perfect, you get an A. You did your assignment. Thank you for giving it to me. And other kids, like, oh, they'd rather draw the picture of their future. Okay, then draw it. And then explain to me what you drew. It's the same thing. And they're all learning the same skill. And that's, you do the same way. And the same thing with your players. What are they comfortable with? How are they best presenting their best selves? And as a GM, it's your job to put them in a position to shine, not to make them fit into your story. My story has to fit them.
I love that so much. That's my favorite type of GM.
I try. Thank you.
I gotta know, like, how did you get into gaming? Like, when did you start gaming?
With Flight Risk.
Really?
I've never played a role-playing game before I started running Flight Risk.
So, okay, tell me, how did this happen? Tell me the story. We got to know.
I guess that's technically not true. When I was 12, at 12, at elementary school, at recess, me, my friend Brian, and my friend Nick would have a 20-sided dice and two 10-sided dice. We were doing it wrong. And we were playing Palladium's Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness at lunch.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Clearly we did not. I still have the book in my garage. It's still there. It's still probably with my character sheet still on the back page. It's like 30 years old, but it's still there. So I played that. We did that for 1 year when I was in 6th grade, and then I didn't play any role-playing games again until 3 years ago. And then mostly it's my own self. I am a socially anxious and awkward person, and it's hard for me to meet new people. So I never thought I'm never going to find people to play with, and I just never thought I would. And then I stumbled on podcasts, and I listened to the first podcast I ever listened to was the Kevin Smith podcast, that's Smodcast. I don't even know if he still does it. Listen to that, and just from that, I'm like, you know what? I wonder if anyone's ever thought of recording a Dungeons and Dragons session, because I'd love to hear someone play. And then I just started finding, Critical Hit was the first show I listened to over on Major Spoilers. And there's an unbelievable story. Their GM Rodrigo is how I dream of becoming that good of a GM. He's just unbelievable. And that kind of got me motivated. I would listen to shows forever and ever. And then a one shot, I started listening to Campaign. And I just decided, you know what, I want to play. And then that's when I started getting on the Discord, and jumped onto the one shot Discord, and I found a group that wanted to play, and I was like, that's where I met Joe. And we played one session, and then the GM dropped out. And then we want to keep playing. I'm like, well, I write stories. I write comic books. That's what I do. I tell stories. I'm like, well, I'll try it. We ran one session like that, and I really liked it. I'm like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to freaking make a podcast out of this, because I want to record, and I like sound design. So I'm like, I'm going to do this, and then we put out a flyer for more people. And yeah, when you listen to the first season of Flight Risk is literally the first time I've ever run a game. I still don't know all the rules now, but I barely knew any of the rules. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was just like, I want to tell a story, and these people are going to help me tell a story, and we'll just figure it out as we go. So I've literally only been running games for the length of Flight Risk. That's it.
Oh my God, I love that so much.
Yeah, I wish I could say I've been doing this for 20 or 30 years. No, I've been doing this for 3 years, and that's it. And I wish I could go back and tell myself, dude, there's got to be people to play with. I mean, I grew up in the 90s. The internet wasn't really a thing, so it's not like I could have streamed like we're doing now. But I'm sure there were other nerdy kids at my high school who liked Dungeons and Dragons. I just wasn't brave enough to find them. So anybody who's watching this, future people. If you like, oh, I want some, there are people everywhere. You got the internet, you can find people. Because like literally, the Flight Risk team, we've never all been in the same place at the same time. I've never, yeah. Joe is in Chicago, Kyle is in Canada, Velvet, uh, Faye lives in, I think, New York, and Nimoy just moved to Virginia. And I've never met any of them in person. And that's fine. And like, my favorite thing is Nimoy. We've been playing together 3 years, right? And she has never turned on her camera.
So you don't even know what she looks like. Oh my God, that's awesome.
I didn't know Nimoy was a minor until a year into our recording. Yeah, we found out Nimoy that she was. Yeah,
you have your parents' permission, right?
Well, yeah, because it was like, because when she was talking about homework, and like, I have homework too, and I'm 40, so like, okay, they're probably in college. No, talking about high school graduation, I'm like, oh my God, how young are you? And Nimoy is younger than my son.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it makes me feel old. But yeah, but the four of us, the five of us have never been in the same place. I think Joe and Kyle met at a con once, but we have never been in the same place. I've never met them. And we never met physically in person. We do what we're doing here. And yeah, that's how it is. And it's beautiful that these people from across this continent that I'm playing with, I mean, like, I've played games with the guys from Force Majeure. That's the other side of the world, and that blows my mind. But I played with games with guys from the other side of the world. So yeah, there's tons of people out there, and it's so much fun. Like I said, I wish I would have started this decades ago.
I love it. I love it. And I love talking to you future people who have like ridden an exercise bike to charge up your iPhone long enough to get on and watch this episode. Okay, even though the apocalypse has happened, you can still find people to game with. They're out there. Don't be shy about it.
Exactly.
I was
Nerds,
joking.
we've been preparing for these We've been preparing for these situations and all the games we play. We know what to do. The nerds are going to make it out. We know.
Oh, yeah. Creative problem solving is like our jam. We know this.
That's it right there.
Oh, my God. I love that so much. So, like, you started listening to podcasts. You started listening to Critical Hit, which is one of the ones that Drunk with Grog actually got me into when I started playing D&D.
Oh.
And then you were talking about your comic books. I would love to know more about your comic books.
Yeah, I wrote a comic book called The Adventures of Arrow Girl. It was a 4-issue miniseries that came out like 6 years ago. And that whole situation is why I'm comfortable telling stories in public now. Because for the longest before that, I would write stories for myself, and I never thought they were good enough to share with people. I'm like, my story, like, I find it funny and I like it because I have bad taste, I guess. I wouldn't think anybody else would like it. And this is like years, like 7 or 8 years ago, there was a company called Shadowline, and they had a contest called Create Your Own Superheroine, where they wanted you to pick a superheroine, a female hero, and if they liked your idea, it was a contest, and you get to move on, and once they like your concept, okay, we want you to write an issue. And I got to the semifinals of that contest with my Adventures of Arrow Girl story, and it was just, I wanted to get it made because I was so close. And I went and I found an artist on Twitter from Mexico who is Oxford, and he is unbelievably talented dude. And I threw him the idea, and we worked on this book. And again, just like Flight Risk, I didn't meet Oxford for like 2 years. And we were just texting because he speaks Spanish, I speak English, so it's a whole lot of texting back and forth. And we got that to work, and the comic came out, and then, it did what it did, and the whole process made me realize I don't want to make comic books because it's super, super expensive, and I don't have that type of money, but I want to tell my stories. And then I was like, well, I like listening to podcasts, and I have this comic book, which is like a script. It's written out. So I'm like, let me make this into an audio drama. And I converted my comic script into an audio drama that I then produced and made all 4 issues into this 90-minute audio movie thing. And from there, I'm like, I love sound designing. I'm like, and that made me like, okay, now if I ever do any storytelling, I'm making it into a podcast because I love doing this type of stuff. But yeah, it was all just so much fun doing that. I'm like, that whole story for Arrow Girl, which it's the story of this girl whose dad is a superhero named Battlejack. He protects their city. His powers, he's going to hand down his powers to her one day. And then tragedy happens. He dies in battle, and his powers go to a silverback gorilla instead. So now this girl has to realize that her destiny was just gone. It's taken from her now, and she has to somehow keep her city safe, deal with the loss of her father, and try to work with a gorilla with basically Superman's powers, Golden Age Superman, like super strength and vulnerability, all that kind of stuff. And it's this all ages story, but it's like it does deals with serious stuff where she like blames herself for her dad dying and how she processes the loss. We told a very adult story with very cartoony background, and that's kind of my niche. My niche of storytelling is like I like silliness with a very big dash of seriousness. That like I always say like Flight Risk and even Tubular Teens, I call them dramedy. They're funny stuff, but there are very serious elements that happen in our stories where Flight Risk is like crimey, so it's like violent serious, but we do stuff like people doing with their families being gone and like the Fortuna twins, their past and that kind of stuff. It's a very serious topic. But then again, you have one of them the lounge singer, the other one made up a religion on Super Mario Brothers, while we deal with this thing of your parents being slave traders in that other background. So we kind of go back and forth, and that's always kind of been my jam. And that's I like telling dark and funny stories. I don't know what that says about me.
I think it says that you're well adjusted because I'm right there with you. So yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I want to put a pin in Tubular Teen Titans because I totally want to talk about that. But I'm really curious. You've mentioned this a couple times. You said you like the sound designing?
Yeah, the whole part of taking audio from the different players and different things and putting it together. For some reason, I don't know if it's problem solving, the visual and nature of it. It's normally very calming for me. I like to be able to take the pieces, move it around, and drop in sounds, and like take this very simple seed of something and then like add layers to it, add like ambiance or music, or like on Flight Risk when we do like we fully cast Flight Risk where all of my NPCs are voiced by people from Coruscant Nights, people from Force Majeure, people from around the internet will record, and it makes this whole thing. I just like taking all these people's ideas, all their energy, and putting it together into this one big, beautiful thing. It's just, I don't know, it's so much more fun than like I could do. I mean, I listen to tons of podcasts that are solo things where it's like one character talking, and it's beautiful that way. But I get so much more out of it by including as many people as possible. That's why, like on Flight Risk, we made a decision, or I made a decision. I do all the sound stuff. Like a year and a half ago, I'm like, okay, I want my NPCs, I want my world to sound real. Like as a GM, one of my shortcomings, and I accept my shortcomings, is that I'm not a great voice actor. I can't throw out an old lady voice and go this and do that. It just doesn't work for me. I've never been able to do it. Like some of the outtakes you hear Kyle say, the only voice I can do is a Western voice. I always end up going cowboy with my voice. So I stopped doing it. I'm like, I just can't. So I'm like, you know what? It would be fun. And I know all these other people. I'm like, hey, here's 3 minutes of audio. I'm like, Sarah, you've done voices for me. And I was like, just do this. And it makes the world feel more real. And then I think when someone listens to it, it's like, okay, I'm not James D'Amato. I can't throw out 27 voices and sound like 27 different people. It always sounds like DeWayne struggling to do a voice. This way it makes it more real. And I just like doing that gumbo of everyone's energy, making this beautiful thing.
I love that. How did you discover that was something that you liked?
Just because I wanted to try it. Because with the Arrow Girl thing, when I wanted to make it into the audio drama, I'm like, I've never taken a class on it. No one's ever taught me how. I literally installed Audacity on my computer and like went to YouTube and said Audacity tutorials. And I'm like, okay, that's how I do this. Okay, cool. And I just did it like that. And it's like taking your rough draft and finishing it, or like, I guess seeing my scripts that I wrote for Arrow Girl and then seeing Oxford draw them in a way that I didn't ever picture in my head. It was so much more beautiful what he did than what I imagined, because maybe I'm not a great visual person. But so I like taking that and like adding layers to it and making it more. And like, there's nothing wrong with just people talking. Like one of my favorite podcasts is like the Magpies, right? The Magpies, GM Ree, the players, and there's very little sound design to it. Ree does some voices, and that's it. And it's a great story. But for me, I like having that extra stuff to make the world feel bigger, more realized, more dynamic. Because like you listen to stuff like Mark does on Chorus Last Night. I wish I had the ability to do the musical things he can do, because that's something I struggle with. But it layers so much into the shows, and it fits the mood. Like you don't even notice the music half the time, but it ramps your energy into the story so much. And I like being able to include that, because what we do as podcasters, we're trying to tell these stories, and you want to suck those people and have them be fully into that world, and like they can visualize and see it in their mind's eye what these characters move like or what they sound like by these different voices, by the musical cues and all that kind of stuff. And it just makes the story that much more enjoyable, I think, to listeners.
Oh yeah. Do you have a favorite song from Coruscant Night?
I am terrible with music. So I cannot.
Me too.
No,
I'm like, there was this episode, and like this thing happens on this episode.
yeah. It's like I'm terrible with music in general. Like I don't listen. Like it always freaks my students. Like when I say I don't listen to music, because I don't. I listen to podcasts and I listen to audiobooks. So I can't tell you what the latest song is or what things sound like, but I know good sound design, and I know that like Mark does a great job. Adam has been doing some great stuff over on Force Majeure. Like again, One Shot, what Arnie Parrott does over there, and I forget the other editor they have, because Arnie does the music, and Casey Pony, something like that's his last name. What they're able to do is beautiful, because it just elevates into this old worldy, like the shadow radio dramas that, we used to be back in the 30s, that type of energy where you didn't have a visual reference to go with. So you had to completely make this world just auditorially, and it's such a fun challenge. And yeah, those guys do it unbelievable. There's tons of great shows out there, but like I said, even the minimal produced shows are still great in their own ways. It's like just liking different flavors of ice cream. And I love me some Magpies just as much as I love Coruscant Nights with their music. They're two different flavors, and I love them both.
Absolutely. So, oh my God, I had a great question and it just left me, but that's fine. We'll get back to. Oh wait, which came first, Flight Risk or Arrow Girl?
Arrow Girl. Arrow Girl was 6 years ago, and Flight Risk we released our first episode January of 2019. So I think we started playing like in May or June of 2019. So it was right after I finished doing the Arrow Girl audio drama and like working and finishing it. That kind of gave me the itch to like, okay, I've done this sound design stuff. I don't have any of the stories that I really want to do. And then I'm like, again, I want to tell stories. Like, well, let's have other people tell the story with me, so I don't have to do all the storytelling. I can set up things and let these players go, and so like that way I can like outsource half the storytelling to my players, and it's not as much on me.
Yes, I love it. Okay, that's interesting. That's really interesting. And why in the Star Wars genre?
Because I was listening to Camping on One Shot, and that was what everyone was. And I mean, the system, I really like the narrative dice. I like I say, I play in the Dungeons and Dragons game, and it's fun in its own sense. But I like the fact that in the Genesis FFG system, you go ahead and roll that dice, and you can have 4 successes, 3 advantages, and a despair. It's like, okay, so how did this go well and really bad at the same time? Or even the reverse, you have 4 failures and a triumph. Okay, how did you screw up, but it worked out brilliantly for you? And it just creates these fun, collaborative storytelling process. And again, it's like it goes back to the teaching where I don't just stand there and talk to my kids. They're involved. It's a conversation how I teach. And the same thing with my game. I want it to be me saying things and my players saying stuff back. It's not me telling you what to do. It's all of us together telling this story. And the narrative dice really create situations where, I can roll the dice. I'm like, I have no idea what to do with this triumph. And then Sarah's like, oh, no, you have to do this. And she throws out this idea. I'm like, oh, that's freaking brilliant. And it sparks the idea in me. And all of a sudden now we're going back and forth. We're telling this crazy story that by myself, if I just rolled, I rolled a 7, I missed. And that's the end of my attack. Where no, I missed, but because Sarah, oh no, you missed, but you swung so hard, you knocked the tree over and it hit this guy and it did all this. And now it's this whole fun storytelling process. That's why I went with the Star Wars, because that was the only system I knew at the time. Because really, again, I've only played this system other than the Palladium system when I was a kid. I've never really played Dungeons and Dragons until I started playing with Kyle. So this storytelling was what I really wanted to get across, that collaborative open-endedness.
I love that. I love that. Also, I would like if you would post your, go into your garage, get out your Ninja Turtles book, and post that character sheet in the chat. I'm so excited about it.
Oh, no, I will.
Every time you bring it up, I'm like, we should play that.
Yeah. I have all my old Palladium books. Which, have you ever played a Palladium game?
No, I haven't. I actually didn't start playing until like 4 or 5 years ago. 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, Palladium is the crunchiest of things. Every skill has a percent, and it is like, it was so much. It took like 200 or 300 dice rolls to make a character. It was because every skill you roll for, and like you roll to get a skill, then you roll to see how good you're at the skill, and it's like all it. But I'm a math nerd, so I love figuring out the percentages and doing the math, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you get your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles books. Heroes Unlimited was insane because they had all these superpowers, and like you could pick them out, but the fun was rolling the dice. And all of a sudden, yeah, I have flight and the ability to talk to cats. Okay, that's my superhero, I guess. Or I can control dairy products and I can walk through glass, only glass, nothing else. And that'd be my character. I'm like, okay. And again, it's that craziness of always saying yes to it. Go, okay, where's my glass dairy guy going? Where's the milkman fighting crime? And that's kind of what you figure. It was just fun. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I will dig my book out when we're done here, and I'll post a picture on the Discord of the book, and hopefully my character sheet's still there. I haven't looked at that book in like 15, 20 years, so I'll have to see if the character sheet's still back there. I'm sure there's some notes in there.
Right. Oh, it's just epic. It's just epic. We'll have to do a live play with it sometime.
Oh my God, I'm having a flashback. My friends and I made, because it was a Ninja Turtle, so it was mutant animals, so it had a bunch of animals in it, but we didn't like the selection, so we made more animals. I used to have I wonder if I still have that notebook, where we made a bunch of animals of our own, and like insects and things that weren't in the books yet, and I had like a ream of paper of ideas that 12-year-old us did. Oh my God, I haven't thought about that in forever. Flashback, Sarah. Thank you.
Do you see this is the whole reason I'm here. Do you remember what some of those animals were?
The ones that we came up with?
Yeah.
We focused a lot on insects because they didn't have insects in the book. So we had and it was the craziest thing, because this is like 1992, 93, I think.
Yes,
so there was no internet. So we're in the library with the encyclopedia looking up like ants. And like, okay, an ant can lift 300 times its weight. So we're like, well, that's got to be, they can lift 30 times their strength value. And we're writing these things down, and it can move this fast. And we're using an encyclopedia. Yeah, we did. We did different birds. Oh, we did fish because there were no fish. We had like sharks. We had to figure out rules for how long a shark could hold its breath out of water if it didn't have the breathe air ability, because there was a breathe water ability. So like, well, then the fish have to buy the breathe air ability, or they have to have a fish tank on their head or something like that. It's like, yeah. We were nuts when we were 12.
So
we didn't know what we were doing.
So good. But you did. You were being creative, and you were like, again, creative problem solving. You were like, there are not insects in this game, and there are going to be, and we're going to learn all of these things about insects. I freaking love gaming. It's the best.
Oh my goodness. It sparks so much interest and past things you won't even know about. Like, I learned so much about insects. I don't even like bugs. They creep me out. But I learned so much about spiders and cockroaches and things that I would never have thought of learning. That's in my head. So there you go.
There you go. What's your favorite fun cockroach fact?
My favorite fun cockroach fact is that they, like bees, can be frozen solid and defrosted and still come back to life.
Sorry, what?
You can actually, they can be frozen like in a block of ice, And if you thaw it naturally, like you don't rush the thawing process, they will warm up and not be dead. They basically go into this weird like hibernation state where all their internal stuff just slows to almost nothing. And when it warms back up, they just get up and start running off again.
So,
yeah, because that was one of the things that it had. Yeah, it had enhanced durability or something. We gave it for an ability. So,
oh my God, it's so good. I love that. Yeah. So I'm just now thinking about the polar ice caps melting and all of these like
all
ancient
the
cockroaches
frozen
coming back to life. Yes.
Well, you always see those stories like, oh, they defrosted that 20,000-year-old worm and it started to move. Like, have you not seen a horror movie? That's how every horror movie starts.
Don't do this. Don't do this. We know that the alien temple is at the South Pole. Stop it.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Watch a movie, people. Netflix is only $9 a month. Come on.
It's worth it. It's worth it. And yeah, Sharknado is on Netflix too, right? I don't know if it is.
There you go. That's a fear.
Sharknado? Yeah, you're out in LA.
I mean,
you're like
a tornado full of sharks. I mean, tornado.
Yeah.
I'm primed. I'm Sharknado Alley is what I'm probably at. You know.
I'm Tornado Alley out here. You got sharks.
Ian Ziering lives in California, so I just gotta find him and I'll be fine. So there we go.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I like it. I like it. So speaking of hokey monster things, Tubular Teen Titans is the newest audio drama that you're doing. Shameless plug for it. I, listen to an angry mom voice. That's going to be me. But like, I had talked to you a little bit before, I think over chat, about why you had decided to do like Magical Girl but not Magical Girl kind of audio drama. Can you like tell us about that?
Yeah, I have always liked the whole Super Sentai Magical Girl idea. And I like when I was a kid, again, showing how old I am, I used to have to set up the VCR before I left for school to record Sailor Moon because
oh my God, I did that
school was over at 2:35 and Sailor Moon started at 3. And no matter how fast I tried to run home, I wouldn't get home till like 3:10. So I missed the first part. So I had to have to set the recording up to watch Sailor Moon. And one of the most frustrating and saddest days of my life was when I went to hit play and it was Samurai Pizza Cat and not Sailor Moon because they'd run out of Sailor Moon episodes. And I was like, what the frick? Samurai Pizza Cat. God damn them. But I just, I really dug like the original Power Rangers when they came out. I think it was the late 90s when I was in high school or whatever. It was just goofy and corny, and I just really liked the idea. I mean, now I look at it like after going through school and taking my psychology courses and realizing that this idea of your true self is inside you. You just have to be brave enough to bring it out. Is kind of what I see draws me towards it. That even with the Sailor Scouts, the Power Rangers, there are these like regular people who want to do good, who have this bigness inside of them, and they just have to find that way, that magical phrase that it's morphin time. It's the wands they use on Sailor Moon to give them the confidence to bring it out. And that's kind of something I battle my entire life of. I know there's these things I want to do that I want to try, but I'm just not brave enough. Like we go back to the hair coloring thing. I've been thinking about the hair thing for like 6-7 months, and I just kind of get that courage to do it. And I just haven't been able to yet. It's taken me a long time. And I think about that kind of aspect of finally realizing it and calling on yourself to become this bigger, better version of you that you know is really there. It's kind of what drives me to write these stories. And like for Tubular Teens, I'm working with Velvet. Fair's my co-creator on this. And I do the writing and I bounce my ideas off of Velvet. And they're really helping me make sure these stories are telling a substantive thing, because I'm good with corniness, but like actual emotional stuff is kind of like, I always feel like I'm very flat on that kind of stuff. And Velvet is really great about making sure that I'm telling the story. And like specifically for Tubular Teens, we wanted it to be as inclusive as possible, because when you watch Power Rangers, they're all hetero kids doing their, which is fine, which is cool. And I like, it was a big deal about the Power Rangers movie because Trini was, LGBTQ, and that was a really big thing. And like, like we decided, no, if we want to have the show be the people that we know, because
Mhm.
in my life I grew up mostly only cis people. I didn't really get experience with LGBTQ people until I got online and I started meeting more and more people. And now a majority of my social circle are people that are, the rainbow mafia or whatever you want to call them. Those are the people I hang
Love
out with.
that.
And I
Yes.
want and I'm like, I want to tell a story that I like that features the people that I know and love in my life. So we have all of our characters are different parts of the community. We have a trans character. Gwen is our trans character. We have we have Jay, who was our non-binary. We have Benny, who was our pansexual. We have Scarlet. Yeah, puppy dog. Scarlet is asexual, and then we have, like I always joke, we have our token cis in Hanuel, who's a regular cis dude who just happens to be hanging out with all these diverse people. And I'm like, well, we got to have our token person. We got to have them there. And we're telling, like, again, just like I tell, like with the Flyers, we're telling these kind of goofy stories where they're fighting like a Wendigo, a garbage goyle. Like I just finished writing episode 4, which is Slam Banshee, which is an Irish Banshee luchador monster that they're fighting.
Mhm.
And so they have this ridiculous stuff happening, and then like we deal with in episode 3 with Garbage Goyle, we deal with Jay feeling isolated and alone because being non-binary, they lost their best friend and they don't know where they fit in anymore. And so that we're dealing with that type of thing. In episode 4, it's Benny dealing with his past of being basically a criminal, almost going to jail and feeling an obligation to a criminal friend of his because that person made sure he didn't go to jail. Now he feels like he owes them, and how he's trying to let go of his past and accept this new version of himself, which is prime Power Ranger stuff. Like who you
Mhm.
were was one thing, but you're this new thing and accepting this new thing. And that's the story for Benny. And he's having this realization while someone's, yelling at him like a pro wrestler. That's the kind of balance we have. There's like this long-winded guy doing like an Ultimate Warrior speech while Benny's
Mhm.
realizing that I'm not this person I used to be. I'm this other thing, and it's like this juxtaposition that I just love.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and I have had the opportunity to read through. I've read through 3. I haven't quite read through 4 yet, but oh my God, the story!
Mm-hmm.
I am in love with the story. Like, I
Thank
don't
you. Yeah.
just it. Even if the audio drama goes nowhere, I personally just need you to keep writing these stories. It fills that Sailor Moon void in my heart because I, like you, at 12 years old, which tells you how old I am. Was setting up the VCR, and I still have. I'm looking around because I think it's either in this room or it's in the a room across the hall. I still have the VCR tape that I would tape all my Sailor Moon episodes on. So I've got a bunch of
That's
the Sailor
awesome.
Moon
Yep.
episodes. Yeah, it just and
Mm.
it's that moment where you realize that you could be that superhero, and I love that you've taken it and
Yeah.
incorporated it into your life. That's just amazing.
I mean, I get it's like this is like one of those things like I always say, you realize stuff as you're talking to someone. As I'm talking to you
Mhm.
about this, that Sailor Moon, that Super Sentai, that finding your true self inside
Mhm.
is what I try to do in the classroom. I
Yes.
want my kids to have that moment where they can turn into a Sailor Scout or turn into that Power Ranger that I see inside of them. And I know if
Mhm.
I said that in class, they would roll.
Oh no, did we lose DeWayne? Oh my God, no! Come back! Is it just me? No! Oh no! Quick, somebody send him a message. That's okay. I really liked what he was saying. We'll see if he gets back on here in a second. Tubular Teen Titans is going to come out soon. We are our deadline for recording is the 21st of August. For anybody watching this, you need to know. So it should be hopefully this fall or this winter. I really recommend it. It is an absolutely phenomenal show. It's a ton of fun, and like again, it's about finding that true part of yourself. So I think we lost Dwayne. See, let's see. No. Also, if you like what DeWayne does, what DeWayne's been talking about, he has a podcast, Flight Risk, which he's been talking about a lot, that you can get all across all of the different podcast apps, anywhere that you can find them. So that's exciting. Um, okay, it signed off. That's okay. He'll be back. He'll be back. So I highly recommend giving it a listen. I know that here in the Nightcast creative community, Mark is a part of it. I think Doug is a part of it as well. And we enjoy their voices all the time. Go enjoy their voices on DeWayne's podcast. It's really good. I do listen to Flight Risk. I think I'm through the first season. I listen to a lot of podcasts, a whole lot of podcasts. So I'm a little slow on some of them, but there's so much quality content out there. It's pretty epic. It's pretty epic. We'll see if DeWayne can get back on here in a second. Until then, I'm going to keep talking to you because that's how this rolls. Next month on Labor Day, I think, and I'm going to make sure we'll make the official announcement, but I know that we definitely are going to have Drunkle Grog on. Drunkle Grog is a person who I know very well. He is my little brother. So that's going to make for a very interesting, oh my gosh, I almost said podcast. It's going to make for a very interesting talk show. So that should be good. It does look like we lost DeWayne. That is too bad. Oh, no, wait. I see spinning boxes. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. You're really quiet. Do the mic thing. Do the mic thing. I have no idea. I think
My internet shut off in my house.
Oh no.
All of a sudden, everything in my router shut off or something. It's like I don't know if it restarted or whatever.
Oh my gosh. No, that's okay. I totally plugged all of your shows. No. I did that while we waited for you to come back. I got you. Okay, so you were talking about what we last heard is you were talking about how, to you, like watching the kids learn and watching them get something is watching them transform into their true Super Sentai selves. And if you told them that, they would laugh and roll their eyes, and then you cut out.
Talk for a whole another couple of minutes before I realized I'm like, she's sitting very still with a nice smile on her face. I must be really telling a good story. And then all of a sudden it went off. I'm like, oh, it's been frozen for like 2 minutes. Good to know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No, like, yep. I just again, realizing that that's what I'm aspiring for with my kids is that them to have that confidence to be able to see a greatness within them that they've probably been either told directly or indirectly doesn't really exist. Because a lot of the kids have spent their lives knowing that they're in special education because they can't read as well, they can't whatever, and that automatically, okay, you're dumber because you're in the dumb classes. You ride the short bus. That's the whole. I mean, I remember being a cruel kid and making that joke about short bus kids, and I'm a kid being bad, and I didn't know any better. But those kids, and you buy into that. You buy into that you are this one thing, and you can never become anything else. And that I want to show that you can be that thing. Like even like. In Tubular Teens, our villains, like Velvet and I were just talking about this, like our villains aren't even really bad guys. Like, as we're writing these stories, like no, they're just in a bad situation, and now as we're telling their stories, like they're the heroes of the story. They're trying like to do this thing. They're trying to overthrow a world that we don't know about, and they're going to be able to fight this thing. And they think the Guardians are the bad guys because the Harbinger has a false memory or whatever. We haven't established that yet. And it's like, no, they're heroes in their story. And like, even these villains aren't necessarily bad guys. And it's like that same belief, like just because you're in a special ed class doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means you process differently. You see things differently. And just like our characters, our heroes or villains, there's really not a big difference between them. It's about how they perceive the world and how they present themselves. And it's the same thing I do with my students. How you perceive the world and how you present yourself controls that. You don't have to be the villain of a story if you present yourself in a way. Now, if you go out there and you're loud and you're swearing, you're threatening people, of course, no one's going to want to be around you. Who's going to want that? But if you are showing effort and you're processing like, hey, you know what, and you apologize for the things you did wrong, you try to grow and you show progress, people are going to like you. Just like the
Mm-hmm.
villains in our stories, yeah, they start out being these terrible things, but as the story's going, we're starting to see that, well, no, they're not necessarily bad. They're doing what they think is right, and they just don't know any better. And that's just like
Mm.
my students. They don't know to be a different way because they've never been shown a different way. And that's what we're trying
Right.
to show, that you're just not locked in. What you are is not a concrete, you're not Han Solo in carbonite. We can unfreeze you, and you can be a different version of yourself if you want to be that way.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that so much.
I get a little soapboxy sometimes. I don't,
No,
I
I
get passionate.
100% like for someone who, in school was put in the advanced reading class and then taken out of advanced classes because I
Mhm.
wasn't reading fast enough, and
Yeah.
then like put in the slow math class, like,
Mhm.
and now I'm in
Oh,
accounting. What?
oh, there's a whole bunch of
Like,
studies that I've been reading on
yeah.
about the negative side of the gifted program, like how much it
Mhm.
messes kids up to put them, just like labeling a kid as being slow and dumb, labeling a
Mhm.
kid as gifted and exceeding puts so much pressure on them that it's almost a negative in its own way. It's crazy how
Right.
and again, the educators before us didn't think they were doing wrong. They weren't trying to be, oh,
Mhm.
let's screw these kids over by calling them dumb and seeing what happens. No, they're like, okay, we're trying to help these kids by putting them slow. And they didn't think about the long-term ramifications. Again, like what I try to do as a teacher, I'm not worried about getting this kid to the end of June. I want this kid
Mhm.
in 10, 15 years to be living a better life. And we have to take that bigger macro view of everything we do in the classroom, and that's what we need to do. We can't just look, oh, I'm just trying to get this kid out of my class and so he doesn't punch Steve anymore. No, I want to teach him to understand why he wants to punch Steve and why it's a bad idea. That's what you need to do. There you go.
See, and we would fix so many things,
Mm-hmm.
and like neurodiversity and different perspectives. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if we could only understand as a culture, as a
Yeah.
universe, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that the more diverse viewpoints that you have in a room, though it creates conflict, also creates the most creative and innovative solutions. Like,
Yeah.
these
So I
these
could.
kids have such value and they have such a different perspective, and it's just a shame, until now nobody's really been listening but you friend.
Well, I always give the cooking analogy. When I'm
Okay.
cooking dinner, if I only have salt in my cabinet, I can probably cook a steak and it's gonna be fine. I like steak. I don't really put a lot on it. But if
Mhm.
I have Worcestershire sour sauce, I can never say that word right. If I have
Me either.
soy sauce, if I have my Dr. Pepper to season the marinated in, if I have my spice, now all of a sudden my steak is something that I'm dreaming about. And that's the same thing with all the different ways people think. We just can't assume that salt is the only way I can season my food. I can't just teach one way. There are so many different seasonings, and I have to be comfortable using them all. And again, I'm not going to pour gallons of one thing on there. That doesn't work. You use a little bit of everything, and you make something great. And that's kind of what we have to do as a society, as in a classroom, that you have to be able to reach different people because everyone is a little different. And same thing, as a future GMs, if you're listening to this like, oh, I'm worried about GM, that's a big part of your responsibility. Is not just being able to tell a great story, because I'm sure there are great people who can write a hell of a novel who could not run a game. I'm sure Hemingway would have been a terrible GM, but I love his books, right? So that's kind of what it is. It's a skill set you have to make sure you have, that you have to be able to see your players as individuals and work to their strengths and help them build up their weaknesses so they're not weaknesses anymore. That's your responsibility as a GM. And it's like a big thing. I know I always say it's fun, but I take it seriously that I want my players to grow and evolve as players. So when they go play with someone else, they're that much stronger, that much more confident.
Growing and evolving as a human, because so many of the things that I
Mhm.
feel like in game we take into life.
Oh, of
Like,
course, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, how many people you see play characters that are who they wish they were in real life? Going
Yep.
back to the magical girl thing. You get to
Mhm.
play this game, and you get to be this guy, this man, this woman, this dwarf, this dragonborn, whatever you want to be, that represents some aspect of you that you want to put out there, that you want to try to express in a way that maybe you're not comfortable in the real world, being a bard and singing these songs, and you want to do it, but no, I could do it foolishly at the table because it's more fun and it's safer because
Mhm.
these four people I trust. And you can
Mhm.
work on that thing that you think you're not great at that table, and you can grow.
again, this is again me being like, every moment a teachable moment, and that's just the teacher in me. And even in a role playing game where you are talking about Super Mario Brothers as a religion, can be a moment where someone can grow.
Oh my God, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're at the end of our time, and I just want to leave it there because there's like, I hope my future friends, my future post-apocalyptic friends, that all of that pedaling on the bike was worth it for this moment. And I hope that you take something away from this tonight because DeWayne is amazing. And you should listen to his podcast. You should listen to his audio dramas. Follow him on the social medias. We'll have that posted in the little bio, thanks to Andrew, our executive producer there. So thank you all so much for joining us once again. I am Sarah Joy. This has been Behind the Mask with DeWayne. DeWayne, do you want to say anything to the folks before we go?
Oh, of course. Anybody out there, if you want to talk about role-playing games, talk about teaching, talk about special education, Super Sentai or whatever, find me on Discord, find me on social media. I'm always up for conversation.
Oh my God, I'm totally going to talk to you about Sailor Moon all the time now. Oh my God. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you in September.